We're recording. All right, this will be our last session of the summer. Not that it was any different. It's just going to be smaller again in a couple of weeks. Next week, we're doing the Labor Day. Yes, the thing across the hall there. So, but we're just going to continue with that. So we've only got 2 chapters to go, and then we're probably just going to continue right on into Romans, which I don't think I've ever taught at this church, which is ironic. It actually didn't. Where are we at? Year and a half. 28 chapters, year and a half. We did Luke in 2 years or something like that. I generally don't like to stretch it out because people lose the context. There's value. That's why I bring it up. I bring the past up a lot in a book like Acts, because you need to kind of keep the whole story. There's this idea of what we call what has been called the hermeneutical spiral or the hermeneutical circle. Hermeneutical comes from the word that means basically interpretational, and it has to do with the way that people communicate and learn and listen. You do it all the time. You engage the hermeneutical circle. You have the whole story of something, a movie, a book, whatever, and the story unfolds through the sequences. And as you proceed through the sequences, you begin to understand better and better the whole through the parts, and then you learn another part and it changes your understanding of the whole. And there's this kind of going back and forth, whole part, whole thing, till you reach a resolution on what the communication is. And that's true for great directors are great at manipulating the hermeneutical circle in their movies. When you think of a movie like Shawshank Redemption, The Happening, M. Night Shyamalan does it a lot. The Sixth Sense. But the Shawshank Redemption is a really great example. You almost have to go back and watch the whole movie again when you get to the end of it, because you realize that you weren't watching the movie that you thought you were. That's just manipulating. That is playing. That is a person who understands how the hermeneutical circle works. So we have to do that in the Bible too. As you're reading Acts, the parts help you put together the whole, and you have to be ready to change your understanding of the thing. And that has happened for me with this book in this time through Acts, because I've come to the conclusion that the book is kind of misnamed, significantly misnamed. The name of the book, The Acts of the Apostles, implies that Luke is intending on writing a diary, in a sense, or a biography of the life and times of Peter and Paul, of the travels of Peter and Paul and so forth. That's not true. And you're going to find out. So if you thought that was the story, when you get to the book of Acts, at the end of the book, you're going to be disappointed, because we are not going to find out what the ultimate end of Paul was. He just leaves off when he's at Rome. And so if you think the book is about the Acts of the Apostles, then it's incomplete. If you think it's about something else, like Acts chapter 1, verse 8, the advance of the gospel from Jerusalem to Rome, from a Jewish church to a Gentile church, if you think it's that, then the book is finished, in a sense. Well, actually, it's often named after who wrote it, or who they thought wrote it. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. Yeah, now they get to the letters to the Romans. Yeah. But even then, we don't know where Hebrews was written to. They just plug something in there to the Hebrews. It would be better if they could have written to the Roman Hebrews, to the Hebrews of Rome or something like that, but we don't get that. Anyway, we are still in Acts chapter 26. Paul is standing before King Agrippa. Agrippa is primarily in charge of the territory left, the territory that Herod Antipas, who was the Herod in Luke, that Jesus had to go see, that Pilate sent Jesus to see at the end of the book, and who had John beheaded. That was Herod Antipas. This is the new head over Galilee, or one of the following. This area is a good case study of how the Romans worked very pragmatically. Sometimes they would have a Roman governor in charge, and sometimes they wouldn't. So Herod the Great was in charge of all of Palestine. He was king over all of Palestine. And then Agrippa the First, 41 to 44, also was king over all of Palestine. Then Agrippa died. That's Acts chapter 12. And it reverted back to a Roman governor. And so that's when you see Festus, and then Felix. There's one between, I don't know, maybe at least one. But then Festus in 52, and then Felix in 52, Festus in 60, after Felix is recalled to Rome. But anyway, the point of all that is these are ever-changing circumstances, and Paul is caught in the crossfire in a sense. So now he's standing before a man he calls king, but who is not king over Judea, because there's a Roman governor there named Festus, but the king from Galilee and some other territories comes down to Caesarea to greet the new governor, Roman governor. And while he's there, he is going to try to help Festus, this Gentile who's brand new and has no understanding of these Jewish politics or internal religious disorder or internal religious arguments, can try to help him understand it so he can figure out what on earth he's going to do with Paul, who has already appealed to Caesar, which in a sense has already taken it out of Festus's hands, because once that happens, the local jurisdiction no longer, I don't know what you want to call that. Once the appeal happens, he takes his hands off. Local jurisdiction can't pronounce judgment anymore. And so he needs to write a letter to the emperor telling him what on earth he's doing, sending him to Rome. And he's having trouble doing that because he can't even figure out the argument. Can't find anything to charge Paul with. So maybe Agrippa can help him. So Paul's defense comes in three parts: before his conversion, at his conversion, and then after his conversion, which is to say his commission as apostle to the Gentiles. And he walks through these three one after another. So he wants to sort of demonstrate his fidelity to the Jewish traditions, and then his conversion to the crucified Messiah, crucified then resurrected Messiah, and then his fidelity still to the Jewish tradition, because he is the Christ appointed for the Jews. So what's the big deal? We tend to think of radical discontinuity. You do not see that here. Radical discontinuity between the Old and the New Testaments, the old times and the new times, BC and AD. That's an artificial line. It's an imaginary line. There was no BC and AD here. And there was a before Christ and there is an after Christ, but it's still the same Jewish tradition that was fulfilled in Christ. And so as far as Paul is concerned, he's just as faithful a Jew as he ever was. And in fact, it's the people who are his enemies here who are the unfaithful ones, because they rejected the crucified Christ who was appointed for them. So we're in the third part of that now. In verse 19, he interrupts himself to call him King Agrippa. He is going to call Jesus the Christ in just a little bit. And maybe he's anticipating using that term to a king and a Roman governor. After having appealed to the Roman king or emperor, he's going to make a reference to Jesus the Christ, the anointed one, the king. So awkward moment, but he doesn't flinch. He's going to do it. Anyway, verse 19. Anybody want to talk about that? You're welcome to interrupt me. That was a monologue, an introductory monologue. Did I have any other monologues I wanted to? Let me see if I had any other monologues I wanted to engage. That's not bad. 9:30, I'm already starting. So, King Agrippa, you're not talking to Festus, the Roman governor who's right there. He's talking directly to King Agrippa. I did not prove disobedient to the heavenly vision. This vision would be the one on the road to just outside of Damascus when the resurrected Jesus appeared to him and knocked him to the ground along with his attendants, but kept declaring both to those of Damascus first and also at Jerusalem. In between those two times is a 3-year stay in Arabia that he passes right over for some reason. And then throughout all the regions of Judea and even to the Gentiles, that they should repent and turn to God, performing deeds appropriate to repentance. That would sound awkward to Jewish ears because as far as they're concerned, they are people of God. They're the obedient ones. He's declaring, no, you're not the obedient ones. You need to repent, which is to say, turn to the Christ appointed for you, and then prove it. in a sense, and that's how you become obedient. Get rid of this word even right here. You see that word? All the region of Judea and even to the Gentiles, that's the New American Standard getting out of control. It's just to the Gentiles, which is the point. Even makes it sound like I went way out of my way to do this. No, no. The point was the commission to the Gentiles. As he's going to say. For this reason, some Jews seized me in the temple. Those Jews are not present. They were Asian Jews. Tried to put me to death. So he's straightforward about it. They tried to kill me then and there on the spot. And I was only rescued by the Romans. I was only rescued by your tribune at the Antonia fortress, Festus. So having obtained help from God, think about that. Having obtained help from God in the form of Romans. That was the help. He was going to probably be beaten to death in the temple precincts. The Romans came down and snatched him out of their hands and saved his life. He just summarizes all of that, having obtained help from God. So if Festus knows the story, and he probably does, he knows that Paul is basically saying that the Romans saved my life from the Jews. I stand to this day testifying both the small and great. He is now standing before the great, as it was said he would do in his conversion vision, that he was appointed to bear witness to the sons of Israel and rulers and kings. I forget how it's said, but he's summarizing his own commission, stating nothing but what the prophets and Moses said was going to take place. So there's his affirmation that I am a utterly obedient Jew. That the Christ, King Agrippa, that the Christ was to suffer, and that by reason of his resurrection from the dead, he would be the first to proclaim light both to the Jewish people and to the Gentiles. So there's your mini proclamation of the gospel in Acts. It lacks the one thing that we think should be there. If we were saying it, we would have said it. And that is the atoning death, the fact that Jesus' death atoned for sins. And you're justified by faith, that kind of thing. You don't really see that in Acts. You see this. The gospel is the crucified, then resurrected Christ, now vindicated and exalted to the right hand of God. That's the proclamation in Acts. Don't lose it. And that by reason of his resurrection from the dead, I already said that, he would be the first. I just noticed that. He would be the first to proclaim light both to the Jewish people and to the Gentiles. I got to think about that. He would be the first. Not I would be the first. Not Peter would be the first. Am I misreading that? Interesting. There it is. I'll give that some thought. So the ultimate destination of the gospel proclamation then is the Gentiles, which is exactly what the Jews are so incensed about. The Gentiles. That's what it comes down to. Okay. I should look at my notes. Okay, there's a geographic progression here. You go from Damascus to Jerusalem to Judea and then to the Gentiles. Even in Paul's ministry, it's the same thing. I think I did actually have I don't know why it does that. No, never mind. I don't have anything. So there's a geographic, you can track the progress of the gospel geographically. You can track it a lot of ways, but it just moves in this great strange circle north and through Galatia, then Asia, then Macedonia, then Achaia, then back to Asia. And that's how the gospel proceeds. It's not exactly, we would take it like an army, right? Like a frontal assault across the whole thing, but that's not the way. Remember, Paul was ordered not to preach the word in Asia the first time. Asia was was Hannibal's encirclement, right? He comes all the way back around the other way and ends up in Ephesus from the other side through Priscilla and Aquila. So I don't know who Hannibal is, but doesn't matter. 21, for this reason, he says in verse 21. For what reason? For the reason that he was proclaiming salvation to the Gentiles. He was bypassing the proselytism, the necessity of proselytizing in their sense, circumcising, bringing under Moses. He was bypassing that and going without mediation directly to the Gentiles. So the Gentiles then were preached to as Gentiles and were converted as Gentiles, never having become Jews. And this was a desecration of the whole way that they thought, period, about how things worked in the world and with God and so forth, so on. So he skips over the nonsense that it's implied in there is the idea that I desecrated the temple by bringing in Trophimus. That's nonsense. This is the real issue. That I was proclaiming a Christ, a crucified and resurrected Christ, to Gentiles directly. All right. So there's the great stumbling block in 23. That Christ was to suffer. The Christ appointed to suffer. Luke chapter 24, on the road to Emmaus. We think the road to Emmaus scene is cute in all kinds of ways. Its significance lies in Jesus' statement that was it not necessary that the Christ should suffer? The answer, we don't think anything of that because we don't understand what a contradiction in terms that would have been to both Jew and Gentile back then. That's the big message. That's the stumbling block that Christ the stumbling. Where's that passage? The stumbling block. To do 1 Corinthians 1. Oh, you Bible scholars. Yeah, there it is. Since, so let's go ahead and read this because it matters. Since in the wisdom of God, the world through its wisdom did not come to know God, God was well pleased through the foolishness of the message. What makes the message foolishness? Preach to save those who believe. What? What is the foolishness of them? Did these people believe that salvation, was that the big debate? Salvation is by faith and not works. And they were saying salvation is by works and not faith. Because you're never going to read that. You're never going to see that. I mean, it's an implication.
That Jesus is the Messiah is another.
And that's bad enough, but that he was a crucified Messiah makes this. We're going to have the exclamation from in just a minute. Festus ain't going to be able to take it. He's going to make the point. He's going to make Paul's point from 1 Corinthians, which was written 7 or 8 years earlier or something like that. To those who believe, for indeed Jews ask for signs, Greeks search for wisdom, but we preach Christ crucified. To Jews a stumbling block, and to Gentiles foolishness. And that's exactly what he's doing right here. He deliberately uses the expression right here in 23. To a king and a Roman governor, the Christ was to suffer, and that by reason of his resurrection from the dead, he would be the first, the gospel would be proclaimed to not only Jews, but also Gentiles.
The king does not.
Yeah, it's a contradiction in terms.
Can't be a king of the dead, but resurrection.
They didn't believe in resurrection. The whole point in their schema, in their Greco-Roman and their Greek schema, Hellenistic schema, was to escape the body. The immaterial soul was the only reality that mattered. The body was, this is all corrupting, futile evil in their minds. That's the Gnostic heresy, essentially. That salvation lies in the secret knowledge. Where did the pastor go? He knows more about this. Salvation lies in the secret knowledge by which you understand that. I'm not going to go any further because I have to go back and read up on Gnosticism. But at any rate, that this idea of a disconnection between the body and the soul which was nonsense to the Jews. You are one thing. We have it today. We have a tendency to think, we talk about when we go to heaven. The point is we escape the body and we go to heaven. No, we're going to be resurrected. We're resurrected to immortality. We're resurrected. We're co-heirs with Christ. We're co-heirs with the resurrected Christ. We also will be resurrected forevermore. We never escape the body. Forget the median, the staging area, the staging time between now and the return of Christ. The point of the return of Christ is the resurrection from the dead. That's the point. That's all nonsense to Greeks, to Greeks and Romans and so forth. The Jews believed in a resurrection on the last day. The non-Sadduceical Jews did. You see that in John with Mary and Martha. When Martha says, I know that he will be resurrected on the last day. And Jesus is not, you're not getting the point. I am the resurrection and the life. Your brother will live in just a minute. And it wasn't just the physical astonishment of the physical thing. It's the astonishment that your entire understanding of the way the world works and the way God works just got upended because you didn't understand that this kind of power was going to infuse this age.
God just got really big.
Yeah. And real. And he is, direct intervention in the life of this family, Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, direct intervention with now this resurrected brother standing right before them. And then it's going to happen to Jesus. Very tough to overcome those paradigms, those ways of thinking. And so they didn't understand that through to the bitter end until after the resurrection of Jesus. Nobody understood that he was going to be resurrected. They didn't understand the idea of a crucified and resurrected Christ. So after he was crucified, as the disciples on the road to Emmaus said, we were hoping that it was he who would redeem Israel. We were hoping that. And that's when he lectures them. You didn't understand that the Christ had to suffer. He didn't die accidentally, says Jesus about himself. He died as the stated intent and purpose designated for him by God. He was appointed to be crucified, not just die, executed, but to be crucified in a shameful manner. It's all part of the plan of God. So you end up when you're Paul, who came from the one side to the other, right? All the way over from the far end of the one side to all the way over on the far end of the other side. Romans 11, the depth of the wisdom and knowledge of God, how unsearchable are his judgments and unfathomable his ways. I don't know exactly the limitations, the scope of what he's referring to there, but the idea of the crucified and resurrected Messiah is literally cosmic in its implications. None of these people get it.
The whole plan of salvation, if you look at it without the knowledge that a Christian has, is completely out of line.
This is nonsense to the people of
It's
us,
to everyone,
today. Yeah.
even today.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
why we need the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
That's
But
the
it's-
point.
But we don't, we kind of misread it. It's very, 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 this is so important. Look at these two words he juxtaposes.
Yeah.
You could put a hyphen right here, in this spot right here. Christ crucified. He never let those words get too far away, and he doesn't here either in front of Agrippa. He uses suffer here instead of crucified, but everybody knows what he means by suffer. It's a euphemism for crucifixion. So anyway, it's the centerpiece of the gospel message. The crucified Christ, we should recover it. But a crucified Christ still in the grave is worthless. But a crucified Christ who is resurrected and by resurrection vindicated from his enemies, and also by his resurrection defeating the power of defeating death. It's the great death blow to death. Death received its death blow in the resurrection of Jesus, and we have our prototype of what is to come, a foreshadowing of what is to. This is the great eschatological event that points forward to a future day when there will be a general resurrection of his and others. But this is wondrous to us, you know, you glory, you just think it's magnificent to these people standing in this room, whatever they're doing, maybe a little amphitheater kind of thing. They can't take it. And we're going to see that in just a second. So yeah, let's just go ahead and get there. So as Paul is talking, he is interrupted. He says, the Christ who was to suffer and rise, as he's saying this, they can't take it anymore. And so while he's talking, he gets interrupted. While Paul was saying this in his defense, Festus blurted out in a loud voice, that's Luke's word. He didn't just say it quietly. He blurted out in a loud voice for everybody to hear, probably representing what everybody's thinking. Paul, you are out of your mind. Your great learning is driving you mad. What on earth are you talking about? A crucified king and resurrected? Is this what it's all about? Is this man spouting this religious nonsense? This is what he's accused of? I agree with that. I agree it's religious nonsense, but ain't no violation of Roman law here. Lots of people all over the world spout religious nonsense every single day. Festus is probably thinking. He's looking for a Roman charge.
Isn't this the mindset of most individuals that we witness?
Yeah, it's just, the difference is we don't have any people out there. There's lots of people. If you say, do you believe in Jesus? Yeah. Do you believe that he was resurrected from the dead? Yes. But it's not real. It's this abstraction, so that's not really their what is their stumbling block? What is the stumbling block today? And it seems to me, we're in a period where there's a competing religious sentiment that's taken hold. It's not even the same as it was 50 years ago. It's this competing religious sentiment about authority and it's still evolving, but I'm onto this whole thing. You're probably getting tired of hearing about it. But I'm onto this social justice thing. And it's become this competing religious sentiment. And this stuff, if you get more than just a little bit into it, it's just an offense to all of that. If you want to talk Genesis, you don't get out of Genesis 1. The exclusivity of the gospel message, we don't like that to start a sentence that way, unless you do this one thing, those kind of starts to sentences just don't work in our time. It all comes from, we need to do the summer thing that I did how we got here thing from a few years ago again, but I agree, but the times have changed and the reasons we don't have anything against philosophically the idea of a resurrected afterlife. So it's hard to get back into their minds and be offended by it the way that for the reasons that they were offended. That's difficult. You got to do that. Because otherwise you don't understand why Festus is exclaiming what he's upset about, what not upset. He's not upset. It's so ridiculous. I can see what he said being preceded with just a laugh. And he just, wait a minute, hold on a minute. This is such nonsense. It's so ridiculous. I can't take you seriously. It's that kind of a response to what Paul said. And he's back where he was. Think of it this way. He's now looking at Agrippa going, you see what I mean? Do you understand why I need you here? I'm trying to get an understanding of what's going on with this religious dispute. And this is what I get. Can you please, I can't write this to Caesar. Right? What threat is a crucified Christ? What threat is a person who was crucified for claiming to be a king? What threat is he today? They're not even claiming he's around. He's somewhere else, right? So hey. Well, actually, it's the other way around. He understands that there's this religious dispute that he doesn't understand. So he's looking at Agrippa going, okay, there it is. can you help me understand this from a Jewish perspective? Because I got nothing. And Agrippa doesn't want any part of this religious dispute. So they're going to end in a stalemate again. They just still won't have a Roman charge. They don't care about all this religious nonsense. They don't care how stupid it is from their perspective. So, but it's just such a great, once you understand what the backstory is, the cultural currents are, you can totally understand in real time. Boy, would you want a video of this? In real time, as he's talking to Agrippa and Festus is listening, and they get to this part about a crucified and resurrected king. And you could probably hear them before this kind of murmuring to each other. Where is this going? What nonsense is? Then he just interrupts the proceedings. It's okay. That's enough. We don't need to hear. I know where this is going. It's not going to help. And I'm just going to call an end to it. That's what I think is going on here. But so Paul rebuts it right away. I am not out of my mind, sir. Right? Out of respect. I'm not out of my mind, sir. He says, most excellent Felix. Right? So it's King Agrippa. So he does everything he can to make sure that he acknowledges their place. So a guy who was calling Agrippa King Agrippa and the Roman governor most excellent Felix is not somebody who's a threat to the throne, to the emperor. But I utter words of sober truth for the king. For the king knows about these matters. Now he's appealing to Agrippa to take his side or something. You know what I'm talking about, Agrippa. And Agrippa's going, wait a minute, I don't want anything to do with this. I'm a Roman. I got Roman privilege. I'm at the top of my world. I don't want to get involved in this sectarian dispute in Jerusalem between Pharisees, Sadducees, and this new Nazarite sect. King knows about these matters, and I speak to him also with confidence, since I am persuaded that none of these things escape his notice, for this has not been done in a corner. So Agrippa can't deny that he knows the events. King Agrippa, he says, do you believe the prophets? I know you, and then wait for an answer. I know you do, because Agrippa's not going to answer. And now he replies, Paul, in a short time, you will persuade me to become a Christian, as ridiculous as that would be to attempt. So I see them all laughing at this point. It's now turned into this circus. They're just not taking him seriously anymore. And Paul said, I would wish to God that whether in a short or long time, not only you, but also all who hear me this day might become such as I am, except for these chains. And you can almost see Paul at this point sit down. Okay, I'm done. Yeah, they're trying to figure out what exactly I don't think that's right. Yeah. I know what you're trying to do, Paul. You're trying to take advantage of the forum and make me take a stand with you on the spot. I'm not going to do that. And so Paul just says, okay, I understand. That wasn't the point of this whole thing. But Agrippa, you now understand that in essence, Festus is right. This is a religious dispute. And it's got nothing to do with the throne, with the emperor.
Even if Agrippa made fun of him or whatever, he is still held accountable for the knowledge that he has now because of what Paul has said.
Yes. Yes, he is. Absolutely.
And that's part of the witnessing process, is that when you tell them the plan of salvation, no matter how ridiculous it sounds like, they are held accountable for the knowledge and even the urging that you've given them to accept Christ.
That's an undercurrent in the story of Felix.
Yeah.
He used to like to hear Paul, so he would ask Paul to come and talk, and they would converse, and it terrified him. Remember that? As he talked to him about judgment and righteousness and the life to come, the world to come, he got scared. He says, "Okay, I'll talk to you later." So you can see Felix kind of flinch earlier in the narrative at the proclamation, at Paul's preaching. So yeah, it's definitely in there, and it's just you're standing. It's the new governor. Everybody's pomp and circumstance. Everybody's around, and you're just trying to navigate. There's so many ways to go wrong for all these people. You say the wrong thing, you get misunderstood. You don't want to say anything. The less you say, the better. So Agrippa shuts it down. I'm not going there with you, Paul. And then Festus shuts it down. And then there's this there's this council that, where they're gonna put their heads together and decide what to do next. But it is just such a great scene. It gives you the little insight, once you understand the little insight into this idea of crucified Messiah and resurrection, understand what they thought about those kind of things, that it's just very true to life, that they might, as he's saying it, they find it so ridiculous that Festus just interrupts it. So I can't listen to this anymore. It's just crazy. This is crazy talk. All right.
What is it after I was said in 2025?
I don't know. It's probably because it's an imperfect was saying. I don't know.
There's other places.
Italics means that they're in their translating philosophy. They're providing words that what they think of as words that don't exist. I think it's a false understanding of the way language works. There's no such thing as a word translation from one language into another. Doesn't exist anywhere. So it's false that for every Greek word, there's an English equivalent. So, you do the best you can. That's why I have problems with even to the Gentiles. I mentioned that one earlier. Even is in italics. Where's it at? There they supplied Jewish right there. Fine. But sometimes they go seriously wrong, which is the case with even to the Gentiles. Even right here. It actually makes it the opposite of the intent. And most importantly, to the Gentiles. And even to the Gentiles. In English, it doesn't work. It's their philosophy of translation. NIV is the opposite. That's called dynamic equivalence, where they want to try to translate a thought for a thought. That has its own problems. That's how you end up with that's how you end up in Romans with the idea of a sinful nature, which implies that we have two natures, a perfect one and a sinful one.
Well, says you can't translate with no dynamic. He said.
That's right. That's exactly right. Actually, they're doing it. Yeah, I mean, they do that in the New American Standard as well. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Considering this is a different sect, just like the Essenes or Zealots or.
I think from Festus's point of view, it's a sect of Judaism. And that's been consistent throughout Paul's travels. No, on the contrary, Sadducees and Pharisees were well-established authorities. They're both on the council. But for this reason right here, this is a heresy. This is blasphemy. He's talking about an anointed Messiah having come. That's blasphemy. It's the same thing. You guys say you believe that the Messiah is going to come. Yes. They're waiting for a Messiah that looks the way that they understand him, he will look. Not a Messiah that looks like this. Yeah, you got to ignore all the book of Isaiah, and particularly Isaiah 53. I mean, that chapter is super duper inspired. There's inspiration, and then there's super duper inspiration. Super duper, yeah. And
Can't wrap their mind around what the prophets have told them, and what they're hearing from the prophets, they're not understanding.
that's right. That's the road to Emmaus. That's Jesus' little rebuke to the two people on the road to Emmaus.
So that is the Spirit giving understanding,
Yes.
even though it's written down.
But it's certainly at that time when you have so much to overcome in your tradition. If you believe that Jesus was the crucified Messiah, then resurrected, that's right there, sort of prima facie evidence of the presence of the Spirit. Because nobody in that culture would believe such things. Not even the people who walked 3 years with him believe such things. They all the road to Emmaus is indicative a lot. It's disciples walking away It's the picture of disciples walking away. They're leaving Jerusalem, going to Emmaus. They've abandoned, they're physically walking away. And then when they don't recognize him, when he shows up he's just walking alongside of them. And they say what is physically represented by them leaving Jerusalem. We were hoping that it was he who would redeem Israel. It's such a beautiful picture of the state of things for these disciples until the resurrected Jesus appeared. And then they turn back around. The picture there as well. They're walking away, abandoning, retreating, and admitting it, conceding defeat. We were hoping. They see the resurrected Jesus, realize who he is, and they turn right around and go back to Jerusalem. It's just such a great picture of a graphic portrayal. I don't think I brought this out when I did the study on Luke. Just such a graphic picture of the reality in space and time. The encounter with the risen Lord. It's an amazing story. Yes. Yeah. But our understanding of stories like the Road to Emmaus gets sort of overwhelmed by, their sort of cuteness and other things we're interested in. It's a cute story in so many ways, they're uplifted and filled with hope again and so forth, not that any of that is wrong, but don't miss the picture that's being woven into the narrative. It's a great picture of the reignition of the disciples. Yeah. In the resurrection of Jesus. Doesn't happen until the resurrection of Jesus. So, yes, great. In Paul's case, he had to have, they needed their hope reignited through resurrection. He needed a complete paradigm shift through resurrection. So he saw the resurrected Jesus changed everything and everything he thought. The king stood up, so it's over.
The reality of the resurrected Jesus is what changed their minds. That still happens today.
Yeah.
Through the indwelling Holy Spirit.
That's right.
That's the only way.
Yep. I mean, unless you believe people are getting appearances. That's right. The king stood up, and the governor and Bernice, the sister, so the king is Agrippa, the governor is Festus, and Bernice is Agrippa's sister. And those who were sitting with them, so there's a council of some kind, they're all listening to this. And when they had gone aside, but I think these are all Romans. When they had gone aside, they began talking to one another, saying, "This man is not doing anything worthy of death or imprisonment." So there's the statement, very similar to the end of Jesus. Statement by Pilate. I find nothing wrong with the man. And then they want crucifixion. He says, why? What has he done wrong? I find nothing wrong with the man. So you have a Roman governor, same position, right? Just 25 years later or whatever, a different governor. I don't find anything wrong with the man. Jesus Jesus before a governor, and now Paul before a governor. And Agrippa said to Festus, this is the great epitaph on the whole thing, this man might have been set free if he had not appealed to Caesar. Yes, Festus, Festus, I think you might have made a mistake here. Had you just freed him, pronounced him not guilty, it all would have went away. And I'm sorry. Yeah, that's right, Festus. He got in town. He didn't want to take on the religious leaders in Jerusalem. So he tried to make him go to Jerusalem. And that's when Paul said, I've had enough of this. I'm appealing to Caesar. You should have just let him, released him. And we wouldn't be facing this problem had you done that. Felix could have done the same thing 2 years earlier. No, because he didn't want to challenge the Jerusalem authorities. But that's what he was worried. I mean, it's understandable. But remember, like I said, the last governor got recalled because of complaints by the Jews and this revolutionary feeling in the air in Palestine. Well, you're coming in to smooth that out. So you're aware of all that. You don't want to pick a fight. And who cares about this guy, Paul? So my guess is that when Festus probably thought, oh, good, he appealed to Caesar. Now it's out of my hands. I don't have to worry about it. And then he thought, well, wait a minute. what am I going to tell? What am I going to tell Caesar? We got more problems to come. So he does not. Oh, that's the epitaph. That's the epitaph of the epitaph. They still don't have a report to make, and they never will. You're not going to read one. I'm sure they wrote something, but you know, as long as he doesn't get in trouble, we have no record of that. No, he's going to wait 2 years in Rome, waiting for that appearing before Caesar. Yeah, by that time, so he's going to get to Rome in 60. Nero is going to turn against the Christians in 64. So if he doesn't get to Caesar before 64, he's in trouble. I mean, yeah, he's in trouble. So how long, we don't know. It all becomes vague at this point. But the church tradition is unanimous that both he and Peter were executed in Rome. We'll get to that at the end of 28. Executed in Rome at about the same time, as part of some kind of program. Good word, PROGROM. Persecution of some kind of the Christians. But that's right. They don't have anything. But here after all this from 21 till since they got to Jerusalem till now, after all this, after the controversy with the temple and everything that's come about since, time after time after time, the Romans either protect Paul or can't find anything to charge him with, and that's how it kind of ends here. And that's why he's going to be sent to Rome. But the point is for him to get to Rome. So there's divine providence here because he's already been told that he's by Jesus himself standing at his side a couple chapters ago. As you have borne witness to me in Jerusalem, so you will also do in Rome. And that's how the chapter ends. What else do I have to say about this?
Do we have any kind of historical information about how the church grew in Rome?
So the Jews were expelled by Claudius. That's reported here, and it's independent. It's also reported. We have reports of that. I think Josephus may report on that. So Claudius in 49, 46 or 49, I forget which, expelled all the Jews from Rome. And then after he's no longer emperor, Nero becomes emperor. And that gets that expulsion goes away and the Jews start coming back. But by then, if the church in Rome was mostly Jewish before, which it probably was, after the Jews all leave, like Priscilla and Aquila, when they come back, it's a Gentile church because there's no Jews there. And so the Jews don't run things anymore.
The Christian group must have gotten big enough for Nero to be able to think them.
That's right. By 66, the fire in Rome was in 64. So by 64, they were enough of a problem for the Jews returning, probably. Right. So here these Christians are here, and they're no longer claiming to be, they're not saying we're not Jews anymore, we're Christians. They're saying, no, we're Jews. We're some type of Pharisaical Jew who thinks that the Messiah already came in the person of Jesus. So the fight starts all over again in Rome. And the Jews, I don't know, win people to their side like they have in the past in this story. And the end result is that when the fire in Rome happens in 64, which destroys 2/3 of the city or something like that, and Nero's being blamed for it, that he did it, he started it on purpose so that he could build this magnificent palace complex that he did, and it took 1/3 of the city up or something like that. He blamed the fire on the Christians, and then it all goes bad at that point. And then in 66 is going to be the Jewish revolt. And then in 70, Jerusalem is destroyed, and that obliterates sort of Jewish Christianity. But by then, Rome has taken hold, and you can get a sense of the progress of the Roman church simply by the fact that the Roman church became so powerful in church history. Right? I mean, all these bishops in all these different cities, but it was the Roman bishop who had the most power and most authority in those early centuries, the Federation of Bishops, as they call it. We don't have any, only record we have of that is the church fathers, which I don't know enough about to talk intelligently. So they have no charge against him. It's never going to be mentioned again. I'm going to go ahead and read this just to read it. This is the journey. It's, one of the most important ancient travelogues of sea voyage in history. It's very, very important because there's so many details about the way that maritime travel happened in the Mediterranean Sea in the first century. It really is an extraordinary thing. That's what I hope. You know, a lot of people don't like this kind of stuff because they think, what do we care? But we're going to talk about why it matters. But look at the names, look at the word, the detail, the local color of a man who was in the journey, because this is the fourth we section of the book. When it was decided that we, meaning Luke and the rest, would set sail for Italy, they proceeded to deliver Paul and some other prisoners to a centurion of the Augustan cohort named Julius. Very, very specific. He's an attendant. So you get the name of the centurion, which cohort he was a part of, the Augustan, meaning the imperial cohort. It's the name of honor because Augustan comes from Augustus, the first emperor of the Roman Empire. And then off they go. I'll just go ahead and stop now. But all the little blue, there's so many little, every time it's a we section, you can kind of tell it's a we section because there's so much local color, and it's usually the travels. So when they return on the third journey, he'll say, we went here, we stopped there after 5 days, and then we went here and we stopped there after 7 days. He does that, and he gives you the cities, the names of the cities and so forth. He's very, very specific about all this stuff. And that's what's going on here. This is so true to life that some secular scholars believe it couldn't have happened, that he's just simply borrowing from other sea disaster stories. That's how true to life this is. That's a ridiculous form of argument. That's right, if you assume that it didn't happen, then he borrowed all the details. That's absolutely correct. I don't assume he didn't happen. So we'll go through this. There's no God in it. There's no theology in it. There's no proclamation in it. It's just narrating. It's like he had a diary going of the travel itself, and he just walks through the travel, the travel log after it's over, and he records what actually happened. And it's an extraordinary story, very, very graphic. Bruce calls it a mini classic in its own right, historical classic. So the shipwreck. This is going to end in a shipwreck on the island of Malta. Great story. About a chapter and a half. And then basically the book ends. He gets to Rome, then he's in Rome, and then the book ends. So let's go ahead and stop there. Yeah, chapter 27 next week.